We continue our discussion on word sense disambiguation and WordNet. We have remarked many times before that word sense disambiguation is the holy grail of natural language processing. If this problem is solved, we solve a range of problems in natural language processing, including machine translation, information extraction, question answering, and so on and so forth. And for word sense disambiguation, the senses have to come from repository of senses, and WordNet happens to be our sense repository. Okay, so we continue, and on the slide we have written WordNet, metonymy, and word sense disambiguation. Metonymy is a relationship which expresses metaphors. Okay, so we will spend some time describing metonymy, which definitely is an extremely complex phenomenon to handle. So, proceeding further, we see that the semantic relations in WordNet are synonyms, which are words with similar meaning, and they appear in what is called the same scene set. The next most important relationship is hypernymy, hyponymy, which is a generalization specialization relationship, where we establish relationship between concepts which are specific subsets or instances of a more general concept. Antonymy is opposition relationship. This is typically between words. Meronymy is part of relationship. Gradation is an antonymy kind of relationship, but with graded meaning. Entailment is for verbs, troponymy is also for verbs. Okay. So, we have discussed all these relationships. We just remind ourselves of this rich relationship called entailment, which is between verb concepts, verb scene sets. So, entailment can be with temporal inclusion or without temporal inclusion. With temporal inclusion, we have two kinds, which is troponymy and minus troponymy. Plus troponymy means co-extensiveness, minus troponymy is proper inclusion. When we have no temporal inclusion, then again there are two cases, one is backward presupposition and the other is cause. So, the example of plus troponymy plus temporal inclusion is limp and walk. So, limping and walking are coextensive events. When somebody is limping, he is also walking, lisp and walk. Somebody lisping also means talking. So, plus troponymy plus temporal inclusion is exemplified by limp walk, lisp talk. In plus temporal inclusion and minus troponymy, we have proper inclusion. So, snore and sleep. There is a period when sleep is attended with snoring, and in that period snoring and sleeping are coextensive, but we cannot say that snoring is completely coextensive with sleeping, because they do not always occur together. So, this is temporal inclusion, but minus troponymy. So, snoring is not a manner of sleeping, unlike limping, which is a manner of walking. Buy and pay also have plus temporal inclusion, but minus troponymy, in the sense that buying and paying are not temporally coextensive. There is this whole situation of buying, where paying happens to occupy a small segment. Okay. So, that is why this is plus temporal inclusion, but not troponymy. That means paying is not a manner of buying. When we come to this part of the tree, then we have minus temporal inclusion. So, the two actions are not such that one is temporally included in the other. So, succeed and try, for example, are temporally sequential. So, one succeeds after trying. So, try and succeed have backward presupposition relationship. So, success would mean that there was a phase of trying. So, this is backward presupposition. Similarly, untying and tying. Untying and tying, if we say that you are untying your shoelace, that would mean that the shoelace was tied before. So, this is backward presupposition. Untying backward presupposes tying. So, this is not temporally included, but backward presupposition. Similarly, cause and minus temporal inclusion, example is raise and rise. Somebody rises if he is raised, and give and have, somebody can have if something is given to him, or somebody can give something if that something he has. So, this is the cause relationship without temporal inclusion. So, entailment is an extremely rich relationship which introduces as its parts troponymy, backward presupposition, cause, and also proper inclusion. Okay. So, we proceed further. Now, we discuss antonymy. Antonymy is opposition in meaning, and this kind of opposition also is sensitive to the word, its property, size, and so on. So, for example, size antonymy is small, big, quality antonymy is good, bad, state antonymy is warm, cool, personality antonymy is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, direction antonymy is east, west, action antonymy is buy, sell, amount antonymy is little, a lot, place antonymy is far, near, time antonymy is day, night, gender antonymy is boy, girl. So, there are different kinds of antonymy which when stored in the WordNet make the WordNet richer. There are different kinds of meronymy also. Meronymy is part of and whole of relationship. So, for example, component object is head and body, head is a part of the body, stuff object, wood table, table is made of wood, member collection, tree forest, tree is a member of the forest, feature activity, speech is a feature of conference, place area, Palo Alto, California, Palo Alto is a part of California or situated in California, phase youth, youth is a phase of life, resource process, pen is a resource for the process of writing, actor act, physician treatment. So, physician is the actor, treatment is the act. So, meronymy can be of many different kinds. The first one is the example of meronymy or part of relation which is understood normally. So, meronymy can take the shape of part of, that is physical part of, made of, member of, feature of, situated in, phase of, resource in, and actor act. Okay. So, meronymy again is semantically a complex and subtle relation, and if a machine is endowed with the ability of detecting and processing meronymy, it is enriched in its capability of natural language processing. Gradation is a spectrum on antonymies. For example is given here, state gradation, childhood, youth, old age. So, childhood and old age are antonymous to each other, these are two ends of the spectrum. Youth is a stage in between. There can be temperature gradation, hot and cold are opposite ends of a spectrum, warm is a stage in between. Action, sleep and wake are antonymous, opposite ends of a spectrum. Doze, which is half asleep, half wakeful state, is a middle ground. This is a middle state between sleeping and waking. So, when these relationships are established, the WordNet assumes a graph like structure, and we see here a part of the WordNet graph. House, home is a node in the graph which has hypernymus relationship with dwelling abode in the sense that house, home is a kind of dwelling abode. In dwelling abode, the meronymies are kitchen, bedroom. So, kitchen, bedroom, these are parts of dwelling abode. Similarly, in house, home, there are parts like backyard, veranda, study. Then house, home has a hyponymy like guest room, hermitage, cottage. These are kinds of house, home, and the gloss is the small epithet describing what the concept is, a place that serves as the living quarters of one or more families. All right. So, this is the graph structure which a WordNet defines, and the moment we understand this to be a graph, we can think of computational algorithms to navigate on the graph and produce different kinds of relationships, do different kinds of processing, all based on words, their senses and their relationships with each other. Okay. So, this becomes an extremely useful resource for natural language processing. All right. So, we proceed further, and now we take up a complex and rich semantic relation, which is beginning to be inserted in lexical resources like the WordNet. So, this relationship is called metonymy. This is associated with metaphors, which are epitomes of semantics. Oxford Advanced Learner Dictionary definition is that the use of a word or phrase to mean something different from the literal meaning, and it does not mean careless usage, though there is a question here, does it mean careless usage? Not anybody and everybody can produce metonymy. Metonymy is a distillation of lots of wisdom, which involves understanding a domain, understanding a particular subject or topic, and also having a powerful grip on the usage of language and the words and their meanings. So, metonymy is the product of knowledge and language expertise. Continuing with the slide, again we repeat the definition of Oxford Advanced Learner Dictionary, the use of a word or phrase to mean something different from the literal meaning. Now, there are lots of insights from our traditional Sanskritic tradition. To understand metonymy, we have to understand different nuances of a word. The power of a word is expressed by these three terms: abhidha, lakshana and vyanjana. Abhidha, lakshana, vyanjana. So, we exemplify these concepts through the word hall. The hall is packed. This is abhidha. Here we mean the literal meaning of the word hall. The hall as a physical entity is packed. There are lots of people in the hall. This is abhidha. The hall burst into laughing. This is lakshana. It does not mean that the walls and the ceiling of the hall broke, or the doors burst open, or the windows fell apart. This means that people in the hall burst into laughing. So, by the word hall, we point to the people who are sitting inside the hall, the audience that is sitting inside the hall. So, this is the lakshana example. The word hall is pointing to its own content. Then there is this example of vyanjana, where we say the hall is full, and what is unsaid is, and so we cannot enter. This is vyanjana. The hall is full, and so we cannot enter. So, if this part is not said, then there is a vyanjanatmak arth, there is a vyanjanatmak meaning of this word hall. Okay. Now, metaphors in Indian tradition have been studied extensively, and there are two technical terms, Upamana and Upameya. So, these two are terms to understand metaphor, and the former means an object that is being compared, later means the object which is being compared with. So, if I take this example, Puru was like a lion in the battle with Alexander. Puru was like a lion in the battle with Alexander. Here Puru is Upameya, because we are comparing Puru with something. Puru is the entity being compared. So, it is Upameya, and lion is the entity with which we are comparing. So, this is Upamana, Upameya and Upamana. Now, these two entities give rise to three phenomena, which is Upamana, rupak and atishayokti. So, Upamana is explicit comparison. Puru was like a lion in the battle with Alexander. Here nothing is left to imagination. The whole comparison is brought to the fore, and the hearer does not have to exercise his imagination. Puru is the person being compared, and lion is the entity with which the comparison is taking place. Rupak, on the other hand, is implicit comparison. If we drop the word like, then we say Puru was a lion in the battle with Alexander. So, it is not as if Puru suddenly gave up his property of being human. Puru did not give up being human and suddenly assumed the shape, nature and property of a lion. No, that is not the case. Puru was a lion in the battle with Alexander means Puru behaved like a lion in his courage and valor in the battle with Alexander. So, what is being compared is not Puru's physical features, but his property of courage and valor and skill in war. So, these properties are being compared with the properties of lion. So, in rupak we drop the comparing prepositions like. In atishayokti or exaggeration, Upaman and Upameya both are dropped. So, we have these two sentences here forming a discourse. Puru's army fled, but the lion fought on. So, in this case Puru's army fled, there is no comparison with anything here, but there is a comparison here, but the lion fought on. Here lion is the entity with which Puru is being compared, and this is an example of atishayokti because the co-referential word Puru, it is co-referential with lion, that has been dropped. So, these are three different kinds of alankar in Indian tradition, which have been studied by means of Indian literary instruments. We see a modern study of metonymy 1956 onwards by Richards et al. And they propose or they point out that there are three constituents of metaphor. There is what is called a vehicle, the item used metaphorically; tenor, the metaphorical meaning of the former; ground, the basis for metaphorical extension. Let us understand this by means of an example. If we take the phrase the foot of the mountain, the foot of the mountain, here the vehicle is foot, because vehicle is the item used metaphorically. The word foot is being used metaphorically here. The tenor is the metaphorical meaning of the former. Now, foot indicates the lower portion of something, something whose foot we are referring to. So, the foot of the mountain is the lower portion of the mountain. So, tenor is the metaphorical meaning of foot, and ground is the spatial parallel between the relationship between the foot to the human body and the lower portion of the mountain with the rest of the mountain. This is the basis for metaphorical extension. So, foot of the mountain is the lower portion of the mountain, and foot of human body is also the lower portion of human body. So, vehicle, tenor, ground are the constituents of metaphorical situation. Now, Haas, who is a well-known semanticist, studies metaphor and proposes that there is a complex interaction of semantic fields when a metaphor is produced. So, there is this core versus peripheral semantic fields, interaction of two words in metonymic relation brings in new semantic fields with selective inclusion of features. That is the whole point of metonymy relationship. For example, if we consider the phrase leg of a table. So, leg of a table and the leg of an animal, there are limited portions of comparison between the two. Okay. Leg of an animal and leg of a table. Leg of a table does not stretch, whereas leg of an animal stretches, moves and so on. But the metaphor holds because these two entities have one point of similarity, which is that both of them support a structure. A leg of an animal supports the animal's body, and leg of a table supports the piece of furniture. Okay. So, the comparison stretches to an extent, but stops at a point. That is the essence of metonymy. Lakoff's contribution in 1987 was in terms of studying the source domain, target domain and mapping relations which produce metonymy. So, let us see what this means. And these mapping relations have ontological correspondences. So, here we take this statement: anger is heat of fluid in container. Okay. This is the sentence. Anger is heat of fluid in container. So, let us see, there is a correspondence being established between heat and anger, and the correspondences are as follows. Container for heat is body for anger. Okay. So, heat is inside the container, anger is inside the body. Agitation of fluid maps to agitation of mind. Limit of resistance maps to limit of ability to suppress, and explosion is loss of control. So, we see how a metaphorical situation is created by comparing heat and anger. Then there are what are called image schemas. So, image schemas are very rich situations describing different kinds of metonymy. So, there are categories like container and contained. Suppose we discuss metonymy in terms of quantity. So, more is up, less is down. This you realize is a very metaphorical situation. Whenever we refer to something increasing, we appeal to the image of something moving up, something going up. Whenever we want to describe a situation of decreasing, we appeal to the metaphor of down, a quantity going down. So, why is it the case that more is up and less is down? This is a metaphorical convenience, a metaphorical situation which is invoked for effective speech and writing. So, for quantity, the metaphor is created through more is up, less is down. So, the example sentence is: outputs rose dramatically, accident rates were lower. Linear scales and paths are also created through imagery. Ram is by far the best performer. This by far, look at this phrase here, by far. Far is a distance measure, or far is a time measure, and this is a linear scale. So, when we say Ram is by far the best performer, we have in our mind an image of a race where Ram is ahead, much ahead of others in a particular situation. So, a correspondence is established between a race and the situation being compared. Similarly, time can produce metaphor stationary event. So, it is as if something is stopping and waiting. Time does not wait, we know time always flows forward, but we have this metaphorical image of a stationary event. We are coming to exam time, So, as if we are moving to the examination time is stationary and we are moving towards it, though in reality what is happening is that the examination date is coming towards us. The stationary observer, weeks rush by, okay. Weeks flow forward, weeks rush forward, and we observe that weeks are rushing by. Causation, desperation drove her to extreme steps. So, in expressing causation, we invoke an imagery. Desperation drove her to extreme steps, as if the image is of somebody who is running towards the precipice of a hill and jumping down out of desperation. Okay. So, as if a physical entity is pushing somebody towards an inevitable end. So, as if desperation is the physical entity which is causing this. Okay. Again, this is a metaphorical situation for effective speech. So, patterns of metonymy. Metonymy is created by means of following instruments. So, we could substitute container for contained and create metonymy, a metaphorical situation. For example, the kettle boiled. What actually boiled was the water in kettle, okay, water in the kettle. And when we say the kettle boiled, we mean that water in the kettle boiled. Possessor for possessed or attribute. Where are you parked? Okay. Who is parked? The person or the driver is not parked. What is parked is the car. So, here there is a substitution of the possessed by the possessor. Okay. Where are you parked? You means the owner of the car. Where is your car parked? The sentence is where is your car parked. Instead of that, where are you parked? So, this leads to a bit of brevity, but also a colorful speech. Represented entity for representative. The government will announce new targets. It is not that the government, which is an abstract entity, announces new targets, but it is the officers, the representatives of the government who announce new targets. So, here what is happening is that government representatives are being substituted by government. Similarly, whole for part, I am going to fill up the car with petrol. Okay. This is also figurative speech. We are not going to fill up the car with petrol, but we are going to fill up the petrol tank of the car with petrol. Okay. Petrol tank is a part of the car. So, what is being done here is that we are substituting car for its part, which is the petrol tank. So, whole for part, that is producing metonymy. Part for whole also can happen. I noticed several new faces in the class. What we notice is persons in the class, okay. But in a more colorful way, we say I noticed several faces in the class, the faces of persons in the class, and here we are substituting part for whole. Place for institution. Lal Bagh witnessed the largest Ganpati. Okay. So, this sentence here, Lal Bagh witnessed the largest Ganpati. Here place is Lal Bagh, which is a famous location in Mumbai, and this is substituting the institution which organizes this festival of Ganpati. So, an interesting question which arises here is that we saw part for whole and whole for part creates figurative speech, creates metonymy. Now, the question is it possible to have part metonymy? Okay, can you substitute a part of a physical entity by another part of the physical entity? For example, can you substitute nose by eyes, eyes by ears, okay, to create figurative speech or metonymy? So, try this as an exercise. Now, what is the purpose of metonymy? Why do people use metonymy? The purpose of metonymy is to create effective speech, effective writing, effective expression. So, we have a more idiomatic or natural way of expressing. It is more natural to say the kettle is boiling as opposed to the water in the kettle is boiling. Okay, that would make things too explicit for effective speech and its reception. Metonymy also leads to economy. Here is an example. Room 23 is answering. That means, the telephone in room number 23 in a hotel is ringing and the occupant of the room is answering, not really room 23. But this leads to an effective expression, a colorful expression, and it immediately catches the attention of the hearer. Let us also understand one important point. That important point is that we use metonymy as an instrument for effective colorful speech and expression, and this engages the attention of the hearer immediately. Okay. So, that the content is delivered very effectively. So, the purpose is indeed to create a forceful expression and to catch the attention of the hearer or the reader immediately with force and effectiveness. So, when we say room 23 is answering, the hearer will automatically be interested in paying attention to the sentence. The purpose of metonymy is also ease of access to referent. For example, he is in the phone book. He is in the phone book does not mean that the person is in the phone book, but the person's address and phone number is in the phone book. Ease of access to referent, that would mean that instead of saying his number, we are saying he, which is an effective way of pointing to the person. Highlighting of associated relation, this is also a purpose of metonymy. The car in the front decided to turn right. The car in the front decided to turn right. The car is an inanimate, involuntary entity. It cannot make decision. It does not have the power of decision making. But what is being expressed is that the driver in the car or the owner of the car who is sitting in the car decided to turn right. Now, notice some of these expressions which are with star. Star in linguistics and natural language processing means an incorrect expression. So, room 23 is answering is okay, but you cannot say room 23 is sleeping. You might want to mean that the person in room 23 is sleeping, but it will not be very correct or idiomatic to say that room 23 is sleeping. Similarly, he is in the phone book is fine, but he is on the back of mind, where we mean his name is on the back of my mind or his address is on the back of my mind is not correct. Okay, we will have to say the whole thing, his address is on the back of my mind. Here the car in the front decided to turn right, but it will be wrong to say the car in the front decided to smoke a cigarette. Okay, that would be funny. So, car in the front decided to turn right, car in the front decided to smoke a cigarette. No, the second expression is not acceptable. Feature sharing though is not necessary for metaphor creation. So, in a restaurant for example, one could hear a statement like this, jalebi ko abhi doodh chahiye. Okay, jalebi ko abhi doodh chahiye. So, the meaning is that an eater in the restaurant who was eating jalebi now wants milk. Okay. So, a particular waiter is indicating to another waiter to bring milk to this boarder, to this restaurateur who is eating jalebi. Now, jalebi cannot want milk. Jalebi is a form of Indian sweet. This cannot want milk, but the person who is eating jalebi is wanting the milk. Now, see that jalebi and the person eating jalebi have no feature sharing, they have no feature in common, but still an effective communication is created by means of this kind of metaphor. The elephant now wants some coffee. So, here it is not the case that an elephant is sitting in the restaurant and is demanding some coffee. No, if presumably a very fat person is sitting in the restaurant and he now wants some coffee. Before that, presumably he has ordered many things and has not behaved with the waiter in a decent way. The waiter is irritated and would like to refer to the person as an elephant. Okay. So, this also again is made quite colorful by invoking a metaphor where there is a reference to elephant to mean this fat person. All right. So, these were some discussions on metonymy, and the purpose of metonymy is to create comparison situations and to create effective colorful speech. There is another category of statements which are proverbs. They describe a specific event or state of affairs which is applicable metaphorically to a range of events or states of affairs, provided they have the same or sufficiently similar image schematic structure. So, for example, a proverb like cut your coat according to your cloth, that means to spend within your means, is a metaphorical situation. This is a proverb, and what is being used is that a correspondence between cloth and income and cutting the coat and spending is established. Okay, these correspondences are established. So, proverbs typically refer to metaphorical situations to create an effective piece of wisdom. Okay, in Hindi, for example, a proverb like Nach na jane angan tera, which means a dancer finds fault with the floor, saying that the floor is crooked and therefore, the person cannot dance, is a proverb situation. And here dance refers to a particular activity, and angantera, that means the floor is crooked, is the act of finding fault. So, having described the semantic relations, of which metonymy is a kind, and metonymy is a very complex semantic relation whose processing requires lots of syntax, semantics, lexicon and pragmatics machinery. We now move on to words and disambiguation, which is facilitated by the WordNet. Words and disambiguation approaches will be described now in terms of algorithms, but first we have a problem definition. Obtain the sense of a set of target words or of all words, which is called all word words and disambiguation. This is a more difficult problem than a set of target words being disambiguated. The reason is that the set of target words, once it is known that we would like to disambiguate these words, then other words in the sentence can be looked upon as clues for disambiguation. Whereas, if we do not know which words we want to disambiguate, then all words are candidate for disambiguation, and the distinction between clue word and the word of interest is blurred. Okay. So, all words need to be disambiguated, and in that process the algorithm has to be more sophisticated. So, the problem definition is obtain the sense of a set of target words or all words against a sense repository. For example, like the WordNet or a thesaurus. Thesaurus is not same as the WordNet, it does not have semantic relationships, and obtain the sense of a set of target words or all words against a sense repository using the context in which the word appears. So, this is the problem definition. We would like to understand the concrete sense of a word as it is used in the context. Here is an example. We take the word operation. So, the word operation is very ambiguous. It can mean something in computer science, and operation in computer science, which is data processing in which the result is completely specified by a rule, especially the processing that results from a single instruction. It can perform millions of operations per second. So, this is an example sentence where operation is used in the computer science sense. Operation can be in the sense of military operation, activity by a military or naval force as a maneuver or campaign. It was a joint operation of the Navy and Air Force. Operation can mean a surgery, a surgical operation. A medical procedure involving an incision with instruments performed to repair damage or arrest disease in a living body. They will schedule the operation as soon as the operating room is available. He died while undergoing surgery or operation. This is medical operation. And finally, operation can mean a mathematical process or mathematical operation. So, this is calculation by mathematical methods. The problems at the end of the chapter demonstrated the mathematical process involved in the derivation. They were learning the basic operations of arithmetic, which is mathematical operation. So, the word operation has at least these 4 senses, and they have to be disambiguated when they occur in a context. Now, words and disambiguation approaches can be divided into these few basic approaches. So, knowledge based approach, machine learning based approach, and hybrid approach. In knowledge based approach, one relies on knowledge resources like the WordNet, the thesaurus, etc. The knowledge based approach may use grammatical rules for disambiguation. It also may use hand coded rules for disambiguation. In machine learning based approach, one relies on corpus evidence. The algorithm relies on corpus evidence. It is necessary to train a model using tagged or untagged corpus, and probabilistic and statistical models are built from the training corpus. In hybrid approach, one uses corpus evidence as well as semantic relations from the WordNet. So, these 3 are the main approaches to word sense disambiguation. We start with knowledge based approaches and refer to word sense disambiguation using selectional preferences and arguments. Here is an example. The airlines serves dinner in the evening flight. This is the first sense of serve. Another sense of serve is this airline serves the sector between Agra and Delhi. Here serving means to carry transportation, and this serving means to offer, to give. So, the airlines gives dinner in the evening flight. This airline operates carriages in the sector between Agra and Delhi. Here serve is a verb, serve is a verb. Here also the agent of serving is required here. Agent is a necessary argument, and serve also has an object. Here serve has an object again, but the object here is a sector. Here the object is something edible. So, now one can see that it is possible to disambiguate the word serve from the property of the object it is taking, isn't it? So, here dinner is the object which is being used as the argument of serving, and the property of this is edibility. So, the moment I know the property of the object, the fact that the object is edible, I know this sense of serve is used here, serve in the sense of giving, offering. Whereas, if I know that the object is of type sector, okay, let us say the Agra Delhi sector, then I know the sense too of serve is being used, where the property of object again is serving to disambiguate. Now, this kind of words in disambiguation is very simple to understand, it is elegant, it is intuitive. However, it requires an exhaustive enumeration of argument structure of verbs, selectional preferences of arguments, description of properties of words, such that meeting the selectional preference criterion can be decided. This flight serves the region between Mumbai and Delhi. How do you decide if region is compatible with sector? Now, region and sector are two different words, but both of them mean physical space, physical distance. How does one decide that? Okay, the fact that these two have similar property. So, in this case, what is happening is that the selectional preference of the object is being used to disambiguate. But what it means is that one needs an exhaustive knowledge base of the properties of the verb, what kind of arguments the verb takes, an exhaustive enumeration of the properties of the objects, the nouns and adjectives and so on. The arguments like agents, objects have to satisfy some property. So, those properties have to be called out from some resource, which typically is the WordNet. Now, this is not to say that such things have not happened, they have happened. The argument structure of verbs have been enumerated in resources like the WordNet, the Prop Bank, the Verb Ocean. Okay, these are rich resources encoding properties of verbs. Selectional preferences of arguments, which are typically nouns, can be obtained from the WordNet. Description of properties of words such that meeting the selectional preference criterion can be decided. This can be done by means of the VerbNet verb resource structure and the WordNet. Okay. So, this is the case. Now, in Indian tradition, the selectional preferences have been used by means of the following concepts. There is this notion of akanksha, which means the desire of some words in the sentence. So, if you look at this sentence here, I saw the boy with long hair. The verb saw and the noun boy have a semantic relationship. I saw the boy with long hair. The verb saw and the noun boy desire an object here. So, here saw is the verb which desires an object, and boy satisfies this desire by being the object of that activity. Now, I saw the boy with a long hair. The question is, this long hair should be attached with what? Okay. So, this disambiguation is done by means of the properties of see and boy. We will continue with this discussion in the next lecture.